Well, welcome everyone to our much anticipated panel event, DR Congo on Just Tech and Human Rights, the Fictions of Environmental Sustainability. We thank all of you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and for joining us for this event. And before we begin, we would like to thank the African Studies Program and the Gender Plus Justice Initiative and the Earth Commons team for making the entire event possible. My colleague Ashani and I are excited to get into it. So we are both post-bac eco-fellows here at the Earth Commons. My name is Akanksha Sinha, and I work with the Earth Commons and the Center for Social Justice. My work revolves around anti-colonial approaches to sustainability, centering the voices and knowledge of Indigenous peoples and BIPOC communities in the Global South and in internal colonies of the Global North to pursue a just, sustainable future.
And hello, everybody. My name is Ashani Kotige. I'm also a post-bac fellow at the Earth Commons and the Laboratory for Global Performance and Politics. So my work focuses a lot on communication and embodiment of science and environmental issues and thinking about how to convey these issues to the masses and through entertaining education. And so now thinking about how we even contextualize this event, Georgetown University's commitment to the environment was activated by Pope Francis's letter, Laudato Si', which brings together this call to protect the environment and to defend the least of these through an integral ecology that challenges all of us to action. And as the Earth Commons and other campus partners act on this mission, it is integral that we as a collective realize that the transition to sustainability must not just be green, but also just, centering communities most affected by climate change and not those most responsible for it. So in public discourse, there's a deliberate scarcity of resources to learn about and act on issues around sustainable but unethical technologies, particularly as it pertains to the DRC. This event seeks to address that information gap and spotlight Congolese and Black voices for calls to action and radical imagination for the future. We also hope it will encourage Georgetown University actors to consider how we source our technology and how to implement sustainable operation practices.
As Ashani briefly touched upon, this event serves to expose within present and historical social political context the sinister underbelly of green technology. The DRC, rich in resources vital for modern technologies, has been made to suffer from the displacement of millions, violence against ethnic groups, and exploitation by multinational corporations, perpetuating a cycle of colonial violence. The extraction of minerals like cobalt and copper, essential for green technologies, often involves abusive labor practices, environmental destruction, and the displacement of Indigenous communities. Moreover, the involvement of various actors and industries, including the Congolese government, multinational corporations, and neighboring countries like Rwanda and Uganda, exacerbates the situation. Other actors, such as the United States themselves, Angola, Israel, Zimbabwe, and others, have contributed to the violence through the destabilization of governance, the provision of arms to militias, the imposition of sanctions, and complicity in the blood diamond industry.
We also cannot forget that the importance of the Congo Basin to her indigenous peoples and to our planet. The Congo Basin provides household food security to over 75 million people across 150 ethnic groups, and the Congo Basin peat stores over 30 billion metric tons of carbon. This is equivalent to the amount of carbon the United States emits from burning fossil fuels over a 20-year span. This raises certain urgent questions, which President of Guyana, Irfan Ali, recently articulated in talking about Guyana's forests to the BBC. She says, "We have kept these forests alive that the global north enjoys, that the world enjoys, that you don't pay us for, that you don't value. Are you ready to pay for it? When is the developed world going to pay for it?" Restitution for colonialism must be made to safeguard the environmental riches that protect all of humanity. The indigenous people of the Congo Basin and all the Congolese peoples must get their just due.
This event therefore emphasizes the urgent need for sustainable practices in the tech industry, advocating for measures to minimize environmental and social impacts, empower local communities, and hold multinational corporations and state actors accountable for their actions. It calls for a shift towards ethical and responsible mining practices, fair compensation for affected communities, and meaningful engagement of stakeholders to ensure a sustainable and just future for the DRC and its people. To share their valuable insights, we have a group of extraordinary panelists with us today. We would love if you guys could join us up here on the panel. First, we would like to introduce Alice Kukapa. Alice Kukapa is the program coordinator for the Gender Plus Justice Initiative, where she supports intersectional gender and racial justice research across Georgetown's campuses. A recent graduate of Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, she obtained her bachelor's degree in global business with a certificate in African studies. Born in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, Alice is deeply passionate about her Congolese identity and is committed to improving the lives of Congolese in the diaspora. In the future, she aspires to pursue a PhD in Africana Studies and continue her efforts in advancing educational equity, environmental justice, and liberation for all Africans. Outside of work, Alice enjoys traveling, thrifting, listening to Congolese rumba, and drinking brown sugar boba.
Caroline Felix is a writer and eco-feminist. She recently graduated from Columbia University and studied history with research interests in the African diaspora, international development, gender-respective frameworks, and environmental policies. Caroline writes opinion pieces and articles addressing politics, gender, climate, race, and various other intersectional experiences. Her writing has been published in Truth Out, which gave us a lot of the vocabulary and context for this event today, Womanly Magazine, Miss Magazine, the Eco Justice Project. Caroline currently works at the Climate Justice and Resilience Fund, supporting their practitioner-led governing board, and at Black Girl Environmentalist, where she focuses on building the organization's community on and offline. She's a Public Voices Fellow and was a 2021 UN Human Rights Fellow.
And joining us online, we have Maurice Carney, who is one of the co-founders of Friends of the Congo and currently serves as the organization's executive director. He has pursued a Pan-African solidarity mission for the past 25 years to build a global constituency in support of the Congolese people as they strive to fulfill Lumumba's vision of a free and liberated Congo. His educational and professional background focused on Black and African politics, having attended Grambling State University, University of Akron, and Howard University, and worked with the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition.
Also joining us online is Petna Ndaliko Katandolo, who belongs to the Yira Circle. He's a descendant of the Basukali clan from the Masaraka and Kitamiaka lands in the eastern part of the current Democratic Republic of Congo. As a Ndaliko, sacred space, he's a memory keeper and a storyteller with the spirit of kinship of the elephant. He's also an award-winning filmmaker, activist, and educator. His multi-genre artistic works are acclaimed for their African futurist decolonial artistic style, which draws on historical content to address contemporary socio-political and cultural issues. He founded Yole Africa, a center for social innovation through art, and the ecological encounter Ishango, formerly known as the Salam Kivu International Film Festival. Ndaliko Katandolo regularly teaches and advises international organizations addressing contemporary socio-political and cultural issues.
And lastly, our incredible moderator, Professor Kwame Otu. Professor Otu is a cultural anthropologist exploring intersections of politics, citizenship, and identity in neocolonial and neoliberal Africa and the African diaspora. He is currently an associate professor at Georgetown's African Studies Department. His research delves into queer self-fashioning in Ghana, particularly among the effeminate Sasso community, and examines the politics of waste, focusing on e-waste workers in Ghana. Professor Otu's work, spanning from his first monograph, Amphibious Subjects, to his upcoming book, The Salvage Slot, addresses issues of homophobia, racial capitalism, and environmental sustainability. He draws on African philosophy, feminist theory, and African science to illuminate the racialized dynamics of waste and its impact on marginalized communities. Additionally, he is crafting a memoir, In My Mother's House, chronicling his upbringing as a queer Ghanaian man in a traditional Presbyterian family.
Our panel will flow through reflections on the past, the present, and the future. And although questions may be directed to a specific panelist, we welcome additions. And to transition to our panel, we would like to ask all our panelists, including Kwame, to tell us a story. So what brought you here today? And perhaps we can start with Maurice and Petna online and then transition to Alice, Kaulan, and Kwame.
Should I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, students and professors, for organizing this event and inviting us to participate. As stated, my name is Maurice Carney, and currently serve as the director of Friends of the Congo. Our organization has two overarching aims. One is to raise global consciousness about what's transpiring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the second is to provide support to the local institutions. And it is in fulfilling or pursuing these two aims that I personally, organization, engages in these types of discussions. Discussions where we have an opportunity to inform, to educate, to raise consciousness about what's transpiring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and to provide a platform for these issues to be present in the discourse, the decision-making process, in the narrative that's developed in the global north. So what's brought me here today is what brings me and Friends of the Congo to many of these fora, and that is to infuse or inject the Congo into major discussions around climate crisis, green energy transition, questions of transitional minerals, access to critical minerals. So wherever those discussions are taking place, we seek to be engaged in an effort to include the Democratic Republic of Congo and remarkable people who are on the front line that are engaged in confronting many of the issues that policies are developed around here in Washington and certainly in the global north in general. Pass it on to my brother Endalico.
Petna, you're muted.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Am I okay? I'm with you now. All right. Habari gani nawaza nyinyi wote ni wa mko sawa. So Petna Ndaliko Katondolo, thank you for having us and giving space to share some of our stories from home, from Goma. Yeah, the question was what brought me here? Is that the question? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's do this. Kawa. Being from this land where the beauty and violence, they are always in constant dance. And given that the beauty and the wisdom from this space is not what is focused on most of the time, I've made it my priority, with the permission of the elders, that yeah, everywhere where there is a possibility to bring the vibrancy of Congo as a space that holds knowledge, a space that holds multiple possibilities that in fact can heal the world, that I've made it my priority to be present. And when Brother Maurice brought up the idea, as much as I hate to do things online, I said, yes, well, I will be present. So, you know, just the idea of thinking around the cruelty that a human is capable of when you're talking about Congo as a space that was created, it's born out of violence, and has been the whole narrative around the country, around that space itself. It is articulated with a vocabulary of full violence. And so it has been a beautiful journey to try and imagine this space in a way that it will be presented or breathed with a much more healing vocabulary to the rest of the planet. So yeah, and bringing that in multiple spaces, it is a beautiful journey, and I want to be part of that beautiful journey. So thank you.
Hello, or rather, I'll say bote, and you guys say bote back to me. That's how we greet each other in Kinshasa, where I'm from. So, bote. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Alice, and I was born in Kinshasa, as I just mentioned. I'm a King wife at heart and through my veins and my soul. But I came to this land, I came to the US at the age of 2, and I've been here ever since for better educational opportunities, et cetera, like many immigrants who migrate to this country. And I'd say my story is just one of homecoming. In everything that I've done, I've tried to extract as many opportunities, educational, professional, et cetera, in the US, so that one day I can go back home and bring those opportunities, those possibilities back home, because that's where I belong. That's where my family is, that's where my people is. And so that is just kind of the story of my life, is one of one day going back home.
Hello, my name is Kaolan Felix. Though I'm not Congolese, I'm Haitian. I was born in Port City and grew up in Miami, Florida. And I think about my story throughout my life. I think reflecting back, it was very clear now to see how the history of colonialism, slavery for the Caribbean and the Americas, and just continuing racial injustice has created scars on the very land we walk on. When I initially started studying history at Columbia, I didn't think that there was any tie between, my interest in African American and African diasporic history and the environment. If anything, I pursued those interests completely differently. I was a historian in the classroom, but a lot of my work, I worked in international development. However, as I continued this journey of my career and also kind of feeding my interest in history, I started to realize that there was an intersection. And if anything, thinking about the communities I come from, it became, particularly thinking about Haiti, it became very clear that even the lack of richness of the soil derivation, is actually directly impacted by hundreds of years of slavery that have preceded it, and the ways in which the French colonial systems produced such a taxing labor system, not only on the enslaved people, many of which were Congolese people displaced into the Caribbean, not only on the people, but also on the land itself. So now I think as a writer, really interested, really looking at how there is this kind of parallel between extractive systems that take and kill and force and enslave people. In this case, I reflect on Black communities, Indigenous communities, and communities of various intersections, as well as the very nature that we all depend on. And those things are deeply intertwined. And in my journey, the reason that has brought me here, as you guys highlighted, was because I'm a writer. And while writing at Truth Out, I was a writing fellow. One of the team members came to me, she was like, oh, we haven't really talked about the Congo too much. And at first I was really nervous. I was like, nah, I don't know. Like, I have a background in international development. I was familiar and studied the Congo. But this idea of kind of bringing in the environment is a really big one, especially looking at green technology. But I sat down and I did what I know how to do best. I went to the archives, I looked into the history, and it became very clear that there was a parallel. And I think it deeply informs the work I continue to do. I'm also interested in probably getting a PhD in history, environmental history, looking at those two. To really, and I think that's really important. And I'm happy I found that space, because I do believe in order for us to move forward in our world and to stop the climate crisis, first and foremost, is that we also have to reckon with how systems of colonialism, of capitalism, imperialism, and so many other isms aren't just impacting people, but also our water, also our air, also the land. And if we can't come to terms with that, goodness, I don't know. We might have the climate change challenge might be much bigger than we think.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting that you mentioned the very things that we consume, water and the light. These are the things that define our humanity. But here we are actually diminishing the efficacy of these very elements on us. So Kwame Oche, before I introduce myself or answer your question, I would like to thank you all for really convening this space for us to come and talk about, a conversation that needs to be had, right? Because, I feel that the Congo, ecological crisis is really undercovered, right? And even when it is covered, there's really a complete and total neglect of the intersections between, the sustainability of the environment and the stability of politics, right? That political stability will not happen without sustainability happening, and vice versa. So Akansha and Ashani, thank you so much for this opportunity. What brought me here? I'm a queer Ghanaian man, and when I was doing my field work in Ghana, or when I came out to my mother that I'm queer, my mom was like, "Oh, so you mean you're going to be wasting, yourself, your heteronormative capital? You're not going to give birth to children." And I think the way she used the word waste was fascinating to me, because it made me really think about waste as a verb, as a noun, and as an adjective, right? And so, how can we think about reproductive waste in connection to productive waste, and how do these meanings of reproductive waste and productive waste align with each other? And so in many ways, I think like rebuking me for wasting my masculine or heterosexual capital was really very much in line with what capitalism wants us to do. That capitalism in many ways relies on infrastructures of heterosexuality and heteronormativity to reproduce itself, right? And so queer people then have to be registered or viewed as waste subjects within the heteronormative capitalist frame of things. And so that framing of waste that my mom's rebuke exposed me to was what made me interested in waste as a productive, element, as the afterlife of the labor of the poor, the labor of the dispossessed, the labor of the vulnerable. And so my current work on electronic waste in Ghana focuses on Ghana's most dispossessed publics, right? So these are men who come from northern Ghana. And for those of you who do not know the history of Ghana, so then the transatlantic slave trade, the conduit or the root of enslavement that came out of Ghana was merely like really an extraction of African bodies from northern Ghana. Right, and majority of the men who work on electronic waste in Ghana now are also the descendants of people who are from northern Ghana. Right, they are those who literally like engage with waste work. And so like this interest in waste has really conditioned me to think about climate change, environmental destruction, but the ways in which Africa somehow paradoxically emerges as a site of extraction and deposition, right? It's a place where all the world's waste has to go because racially we Black people and Africans have always been waste, right, within the capitalist or racial capitalist scheme of things. So that is what brought me here, and I'm really looking forward to asking you my questions and then or our questions, and then we can open it up to the audience. So I think we are going to have three sections to the panelists. We have I'll have you giving us your reflections on the past, on the present, and on the future. And I am going to actually be asking, I'll start with Maurice. Maurice, so my question to you would be really thinking about colonialism's intersection and the ways in which, colonialism really lays out the geography of extraction that we are currently contending with, right? So could you please give us an outlay of the historical and the socio-political context that informs the DR Congo's exploitation today? And how do you think the legacies of colonialism shape today's new colonial exploitation? And who are the key actors ensuring the preservation of violence and extractivism? I know that is a very dense question, so I'll be very happy to break it down. So just give us an outlay of the historical and the socio-political context of exploitation in the Congo today. Please, can you unmute?
It's fine. I get it. I get the question. And we have, at Friends of the Congo, we've tried to put it in a narrative. What you just shared is a big question. Put it in a narrative that is digestible and understandable. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is particularly unique when you talk about the question of colonialism, right? If we look at the history of Africans, people of African ancestry over the past 500 years, we see that Congo region, the central part of Africa, has loomed large, right? Emory University and UNESCO have a database. People can consult it. It's at slavevoyages.org, slavevoyages.org. And in their database, Emory University, in their studies of the extraction of Africans from the continent to the Americas, they say almost half of the Africans that were trafficked to the Americas came out of the Congo region, right? That Central Africa region. In fact, I say 4 out of 10. So we see a period from early 1500s to the mid to late 1800s, where human bodies were being extracted from the African continent and the heart of the continent, the central part of Africa, contributing a plurality of Africans to the Americas. So the colonial period for that part of the continent is following these hundreds of years of extraction, right? And so we see the Congo region, the central part of the heart of the African continent, being central in that tragic drama of people of African ancestry over a 500-year period. Now we get to the mid to late 1800s, where European powers gathered in Berlin at the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference to establish their spheres of influence on the African continent in a way that they wouldn't incessantly go to war against each other to see who would control what piece of real estate on the continent. And here we see Congo. The Berlin Conference was also called the Congo Conference, and Congo was exceptional among all the other colonies in the sense that it didn't begin as a colony, right? It began, the Congo Free State, as property owned by one person, King Leopold II of Belgium. And within that 23-year period that he owned it, 1885 to 1908, where we saw that he was extracting primarily rubber, to some extent ivory, in order to fuel Western industries, it decimated the population by half, right? In fact, the atrocities that were committed in the Congo under King Leopold was such that it generated an international outcry, even in that period, right? Late 1800s, early 1900s. You know, so you have figures like Mark Twain writing King Leopold Soliloquy, or major figures like Booker T. Washington writing cruelty in the Congo. You know, you have the Congo Reform Association being formed by Roger Casement and Ed Morale. So Congo didn't become a colony until after 22 years of ownership, right? And then it was turned over to the Belgian state, where they ruled it as a colonial outpost from 1908 to 1960. And what is constant that is present, in our opinion, to this very day? There are a few things. One is certainly the extent to which the extractive process has had a devastating impact on the Congolese people. Under King Leopold, population was decimated by half, an estimated 10 million Congolese perished, right, in that framework of extraction. And today, 1996 to the present, an estimated 6 million Congolese have perished. So over 130 years later, the outcome, right, of that extractive process is as devastating today as it was yesterday, even after an international outcry. So that's one fundamental consistency over this period, from this colonial period to independence to neo-colonial period. We see Congolese perishing in a disproportionate number. Second, which is connected, is that for all intents and purposes, right, the Congolese people do not exercise full control over their land, over their resources, over their wealth, over their affairs. That pursuit of Congolese reclaiming their land, reclaiming their wealth, reclaiming their resources, reclaiming their affairs is still very much obtained to this very day. Because remember, even with the first international outcry against the ownership of the Congo by King Leopold II, it wasn't an outcry to say, well, the king owns the Congo, let's turn the Congo over to the Congolese people. That wasn't the outcome. The outcome was Congo was turned over to the Belgian state. So that pursuit that's laid out in works like Dr. Georgian's Ngola and Talaja's From Leopold to Kabila, People's History, of the people struggling and resisting in an effort to regain control of their own affairs, is still very much a contemporary question, right? And that is where Friends of the Congo join in solidarity with the Congolese people, combating those forces, right? Combating those forces that are preventing the Congolese from exercising ultimate sovereignty over their land and over their affairs. And so those a third element of the challenge is, and this has come about really from the early 1900s to the present, is the silence, right? The the erasure of the Congolese people in the drama that we see unfolding. Or I shouldn't even say just a drama, but it's a country that is so critical to not only to the African continent, right? A space in the heart of Africa that's so critical not only to the African continent, but also to the planet. Especially if we look at two dominant phenomena of today: combating the climate crisis, right, on the one hand, and facilitating a green or so-called clean energy transition. We see that Congo looms large in both of those spaces. However, when it comes to the narrative, when it comes to policy, when it comes to decision making, when it comes to even popular understanding, Congo is diminished. The suffering of the people is diminished. The value of the country and its people are diminished. So that element of silence actually contributes and helps to perpetuate the suffering that we see the people face, the devastation that we see that's been wreaked on the Congo. And as Petna will probably discuss, and as we discovered, is also the salvation that may be found among its indigenous people in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their understanding, in terms of their wisdom that can contribute, right, to major challenges that we as a people, as a planet, as a world are facing today. So those three elements, those three phenomena still obtain to this very day, in terms of the silence, in terms of Congolese being in pursuit of controlling and determining their own affairs, and in terms of the framework that's been established for the extractive framework that's been established for the past 500 years, that still very much obtains to this very day. So those three principles, those three phenomena are still very present, even though they have their roots historically from the period of enslavement, colonialism, through neocolonialism, and right to today.
Thank you very much. I think the next question is going to go to Petna. Petna, please can you share with us the impact of the legacy that Maurice just shared on the Eastern Congo in particular? Is there any way you can actually expose us to the consequences of these legacies in the Eastern Congo? And I think our audience would like to know what makes the Eastern Congo in particular so unique within Congo at large.
Yeah, this is interesting. Thank you for what you just shared, Brother Maurice. It's always difficult to talk about this space itself, as Congo, because just bouncing on what Maurice was sharing, the way the question goes from just the way how these spaces were imagined, right? They were imagined from a point of view that has nothing to do with the livings that were inhabiting in those spaces, right? And then if you look at the first action that was made by colonization, I don't differentiate colonization and capitalism. It's it is just a continuity and a combination of one another. So when I say colonization, also understand it's capitalism, and it's a kind of capitalism, understand that it's colonization. So the first actions were the act of extractivism, those actions were to, first of all, creating space was much more of a systematic violence where it started with the land itself, you know, and those actions were to cut down trees. The livings who were there were, first of all, to get rid of them so that infrastructures of extractivism can be established there. And these same actions with the entire system that was put in place has never heard anything that were considering the livings that were in the space as part of the whatever was being constructed. It was more like, how can we exploit all of the livings that were there, right? And then so the administrative space of what I call the management of the social structure was imposed on a being that had nothing to do with it. And looking at now what we are facing as a reality today is that that language that has been established with this fast action does not compute with the local practices, and therefore what we are witnessing, it is this confusion, perpetual confusion that doesn't bring any kind of solution, you know. And if we talk about the practicability, going to your question, the example will be just the system of passing on knowledge, or creating the process of creating a healthy culture of introducing new knowledges. It is not there. It is not there. We're trying to not even recycling. We are navigating into a vocabulary or practices that they don't make sense at all with the local practices. You will look at the system of education whereby from the colonial heritage, we are dealing with a system that sees education as as a trajectory that has an end, you know. And if you look at most of the indigenous practices, the passing on knowledge, the education, it is something that you don't go get and then you finish it and then you become an expert. No, it is something that it is an endless process up to where you transition and then the knowledge will restart again. The way, the approaches of understanding even temporality has also its own its own confusion when you come with everything we did, all the heritage from the colonial practices, you know, and there we end up with the illusion that, you know, that we can control time. Therefore, production, it is more of the essence that we can master. And at the end of the day, we create a disconnect, and this disconnect pushes us to this over exploiting I don't even want to refer to them as resources, you know, giving all these small illusion that you know that we can stop, let's say, aging, right? We can stop aging. And of course, by creating I can go on and on in the understanding of how does the colonial heritage it is manifesting itself today in so many things. But I just wanted to point this in short. That will be the spaces as we are trying to reimagine them today will not make sense if we still thinking about them in terms of the way we inherit the colonial legacy, and places like Congo. I hear a lot of time Congo being presented as a in terms of resources, right? And already when we stick on this language of presenting Congo as that's this place to exploit in terms of those resources, it's already problematic. And when you're talking about to reflect on how the colonial heritage keep on playing, it is the same way. These places, as I started saying, that they were imagined within the capitalism framework. And the way we're still articulating them, we articulate them in a capitalism framework. And they're thinking that we can expect different results. No, the result will be the same. Because if we start thinking Congo in how much you can get in terms of minerals and wealth, in terms of money, and in terms of all these things, then the first reaction or action will be to go and exploit again. Yet if we articulate that from the ancestral ecology point of view, then we'll start seeing the dynamic of a living space that can provide more spaces to the wealth of the world in terms of reciprocity and cohabitation. So that's what I wanted to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. I think thank you so very much. That was such a delicious response. Because we use the word resources and resource uncritically, and I think you're directing our attention to really be very circumspect in how we talk about resources. I think is very critical, and I'm going to actually bear that in mind. So my students who are in the room would benefit from that too. Alex, I would like to quickly ask you, so well, since you came here when you were 2, right? How do you think public consciousness about the Congo DR has changed, right? And especially in relation to the current, politics around extraction that we are witnessing. I mean, have you seen any shifts in the paradigms around the Congo DR in the diaspora?
That's an interesting question. I think there are 2 ways to really answer it. For one, I think within the context of the Congolese people who are currently living in this US empire, and just kind of growing up, at least for me personally, I have parents who are very grateful of being Congolese. They're very prideful of their Congolese identity, which has helped instill that within me. My mom was raised in Kinshasa. She's a city girl, always been a city girl. And my dad was raised in the province of Bandundu in the territory Gungu in a small village called Indela. He is part of the Kipende people, and that is something that he's very, very prideful of. And so I would say within the Congolese diaspora, within the DMV, their pride of Congo has been steadfast and unchanged over the years. I don't just learn of stories of my country or my homeland from my parents, but I learn of them from the community that I surround myself with, from my parents' friends, from my siblings, from just all these different people of different age groups, whether it be elders to young people or anything like that who can share of the wonderful stories that they had while living in Congo, of Congo and etc. And I think that really goes to the point of reimagining Congo outside of this exploitative language of knowing of Congo as a place where people live there, people who look like me and who don't look like me, and people who come in all different shapes and sizes, a place where people go to eat at cafes and they go to dance and they go to share stories and laugh. You know, there is so much of Congo that is not shown at all in the media. And there, you'll learn that there are so many similarities between us and people there too, and how we interact with not just each other, but also how we interact with the land, with the ecology, with our need to preserve our land and our need to preserve not just for us, but for generations that will come like beyond us. And so I'd say within diaspora, the mobilization of wanting to fight for Congo, wanting to bring justice to Congo or liberate Congo has been constant. As far as when you look at outside of the diaspora, people who may not be as related to Congo through people or land or stories or anything like that, I'd say the mobilization has certainly shifted. There is somewhat of an upward trend. I think now, especially, there's been a popularization of wanting to liberate three places in particular. You'll often hear Free Palestine, you'll hear Free Congo, and you'll hear Free Sudan. And although these three different places have much, the land is different, the ecology is different, people are different. You've seen kind of, and I'm sure most of you have seen it too, an increase in interest in learning about these people and these countries and learning, or some of them occupy territories and learning how to free them. But the interest kind of stops there, right? A lot of the engagement with Congo is usually very digital. And although, you know, digital mediums have its values, they allow us to learn in different ways that we're not able to learn. But it's just not enough. There's usually a lot of, there's usually a lot of disconnects between the digital media that you may use to learn about Congo and what's actually happening on the ground with the people that are living a Congolese life and experiencing disruption within their daily lives. And so I say that to say that one example of this was recently the Congolese community had the opportunity to meet with one of the Maryland senators who's running for Congress. And in this meeting, the senator came to the Congolese community because a lot of Congolese have the ability to vote within the American elections. A lot of Congolese have American passports and are American citizens. And so in this kind of conversation between the senator and the community raised a lot of rightful questions about what is the US doing to help Congolese that are on the ground, and why is the US empire continuing to fund a lot of these very harmful mechanisms or vehicles that are causing destruction in our homeland. And so the senator kind of just gave us very general answers that did not help kind of ease any of our questions or ease any of our pain or anything like that. Not that we were hoping that this very American, very white man, US senator would help us in any way, but it kind of goes to show that Congo is on people's radars, and I'm sure that's why a lot of you are here too. But how much do you know about Congo beyond just Congo? Like, what do you see Congo for? What stories have you heard of Congo? How do you engage with Congo? How do you learn about Congo? If you even do learn about Congo, is it just a simple engagement of Free Congo and you tweet that and that's it? Or is it more? Are you mobilizing? Are you doing things? Are you reading? And so that's kind of what I would say is like, there is a sense of, I think, Maurice also talked about this, a sense of silencing of Congo. And I think Maurice said that there's been a diminishing view of Congo, but I would even go as far as to say that Congo is unseen within the public eye. And when you think of Congo as unseen, how do you see something that you never saw before? How do you engage with something that maybe even several months ago, you may not have ever heard of DR Congo? And that's a really hard question too, especially when it comes to seeing something that still bears the weight of its colonial projects, seeing a land that still interacts with those colonial projects. And how do you even see it outside of this Western viewpoint?
Thank you so much. And I think on that note, we are going to shift to the next section, which is on reflections on the present. And since you brought up the issue of silencing and erasure, I think the next person is going to be Van Cullen. And because your work is doing that work on silence, right? And making visible the invisible. And so your work, which explores green tech industry and exploitative violence in DRC, is phenomenal. It's done the work on silence, began a conversation around the dangers and the trepidatiousness of green tech. So could you please share more about how sustainable technology industries are integrated in patterns of colonial extractivism and violence in the DR Congo?
Yes, I think the first answer to this question, I want to ask the audience a question. How many of you guys have phones? If you guys can raise your hands, raise up your phones. Who here has a laptop? Who here has an iPad? The way that our current technologies work, especially in the case of digital technologies, are batteries, and we all know about batteries. AA batteries, in this case, the batteries in our phones to kind of keep the energy for us to use them. On our computers, when you charge them, you unplug them. The way that you're not connected to the wall the whole entire time using your computer with battery. And I would say, I believe 80% of the cobalt, which is a mineral that is present in batteries and helps batteries kind of stay more efficient, so that not every 2 seconds you're plugging your phone. That's the mineral is cobalt, and 80% of cobalt is extracted from the Democratic Congo. If you have Apple products, I can guarantee that the cobalt in your phone, in your laptop, and your iPads are usually from Southern Congo. Think about that. Think about our speakers here. And the various perspectives they talked about colonialism, and we'll talk more about the kind of contemporary violence that's happening. That violence is what's powering your phone. And that might, and it's hard to even grasp and think about that. How does your mind really wrap your head around the fact that every time you go to look something on the internet, that behind that, powering that is war, is child labor, is violence, is neocolonialism. And that's the power of neocolonialism. We get to enjoy, especially in the global north, the United States, we get to enjoy life, we get to enjoy ease, and be able to forget and never really confront the cost of that. Really, where is that coming from? And in this case, when we're talking about DRC, we're talking about cobalt, but everything around us, our clothing, our technologies, the hardwood floors, they all come from somewhere. And unfortunately, within our neo-colonial system, where they come from and how they get here are often not very ethical and don't really feel good when we think about them, and which is often why we don't think about them. So in particular with green technology, so as we transition into renewable energies, and you guys have heard about that, let it be through the Infrastructure Reduction Act. You guys have probably heard about the news. I hope that most of you guys are aware about the climate crisis and how we're moving away from fossil fuels and into renewable energies. And in order to kind of sustain and power those renewable energies, so think about solar, wind, and also electrification of these energies, need batteries. Batteries are how we pretty much sustain or kind of contain that energy to be able to use not immediately. That's how, with solar panels, You get energy not just in the daytime, you can also at the nighttime, the way your solar panel produces energy and stores energy for you to use later on is through batteries. And, you know, this is for green technology a tough question. Actually, I don't think it's a tough question, actually. I'll correct myself. So the question of, you know, what is sustainable for green technologies? When you ask, I believe the whole mathematical equation that these companies are doing is usually focused on greenhouse gas emissions. So what makes solar energy and wind energy more efficient than fossil fuel energy is greenhouse gas emission. That's the kind of scale that's being used. And for the most part, sure, using solar energy is less greenhouse gas intensive. It produces less carbon, less methane than fossil fuels. However, what is not in this equation of sustainability is the costs of people. And that is often a neocolonial structure. This idea, especially green technology, that when they're doing the kind of cost benefit analysis as to what makes one technology more sustainable than the other, fossil fuels obviously are not sustainable either, but also have a human cost. That human cost isn't taken into account either. So when these tech companies or energy companies are thinking about that equation, they're not accounting for the impacts of fracking on a community and their water. But even here, as we transition to green technology, they're also not accounting for, okay, when we extract cobalt, where does it come from? How is it destabilizing countries, destabilizing communities? How is it affecting their access to clean water, clean access to their land? Those questions aren't accounted for. And I think that is actually a fundamental flaw in climate spaces. I would say not until probably the last 10 years have we seen climate spaces even really consider human rights and human impacts. In the past, I think of when I was growing up, when we talk about climate change, when you think about climate change, you see a picture of a polar bear. Maybe when you talk about an oil spill, you see a picture of a duck stuck in oil. And absolutely, we should be talking about the ducks and the polar bears and the greenhouse gas emission. Absolutely, that's a part of the equation. And for as long as the polar bear has been losing its habitat, the polar bear and penguins have been losing their habitat, so have native indigenous people of the Arctic been losing their communities and habitats. For as long as you see the duck stuck in oil, I'm thinking about the Gulf of Mexico in the United States after the BP spill, and that was the image. Along with the duck and oil, there's also communities that no longer have access to fishing and their livelihoods anymore. And in the Congo, we're seeing that kind of concern as well. That when we're conceptualizing what is green and what is sustainable, the focus is on greenhouse gases. Maybe sometimes, if we're lucky, ecology in terms of animals, but not really people. And the kind of political, social instabilities that come from that. And I think that's once again a cornerstone of green technology, is so that we as people in the global north, and also internal colonies in the global north, can visibilize that. And oftentimes with green technology in the supply chain, oftentimes don't necessarily have another choice. There's not really many other options for sourcing cobalt. And it's not because there aren't, it's oftentimes because green tech, once again with this conceptualization, isn't even asking those questions. Isn't really asking, okay, what are alternatives here? What does it mean how do we get cobalt and let's maybe recycle cobalt? That's maybe a conversation converging in the last few years. How does sourcing cobalt affect communities? Like, that's not really a question. And even though there could be solutions if they ask those questions. So what we're seeing now with green technology that purports itself to be sustainable is a kind of unquestioning of the neocolonial kind of supply chain that it's benefiting from. These companies aren't thinking about how they get these resources, they just have them. And in doing so, not necessarily thinking interestingly or innovatively as to other ways to kind of build up a truly sustainable environment or truly sustainable system. And in doing so, kind of erasing that. So we see green technology as fossil fuel fades away, and fossil fuels were all obviously so complicit, extremely complicit in that kind of degradation of people and planet. We see green technology kind of coming to the space, interested in greenhouse gases, but not interested in human costs. Kind of stepping into a new neocolonial framework and kind of being unquestioning. And unfortunately, if we really want to address climate change in a substantive way, in a real way, in a way that will save hopefully all of us and the children and the generations to come after us here in the United States and across the world, it's not just about greenhouse gases. If our vision of climate change is just about greenhouse gases, I'm so sorry, but we may not make it as in the way that we want to make it. It needs to be in a framework that understands the cost of human life. As well, we are also integral parts of the environment. The people of Congo are integral parts of their environment, and that should be accounted for.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Alice again real quick. So Alice, from your own community and knowledge of that community, as well as your work experiences, what can you share with us about the gendered impacts of extractivism in the Congo?
The gendered impact and the extractivism of Congo has been varied and it's been very violent. And just kind of trigger warning, I'm gonna share a number, but I'll just focus on this. The UN has reported in 2010 that at least 200,000 women have been raped. Now, let's kind of think of that number, 200,000. I don't know 200,000 people, 200,000 is so hard to think about, but even a stadium is, I think it was like 200,000, right? Like maybe 10 stadiums would be 200,000 people or more than that. And this is just in 2010, mind you. So of course, it's been 14 years since then. So we can assume that the number has at least doubled, if not more. And when you think about violence against women in that context, and you think about rape in particular and how that has been used as a weapon of war, because that's what a lot of these armed people are using it as, or just people in general within either the mining districts or anything like that are using it as. And you think about how that impacts these people and these women in particular, and how it impacts their lives, and how some of them might not even have access to abortion clinics or access to any sort of resources to help them deal with this kind of violence that's going on, this perpetual, consistent, continued violence, right? And especially as you were saying too, when you think about environmentalism and you think about ecology, and you think about who are the people mending to the land, women have always played a central role in environmental efforts, in tending to our land, in taking care of agriculture, of so many things when it comes to the environment. And so you cannot think about environmentalism without thinking about Congolese women in this context, and the role that they play in maintaining and making sure that the climate crisis is not exacerbated within their communities, because these are the communities that they live in, right? Like we don't live there, and we have the pleasure to talk about it, to think about it, to intellectualize it, but these are the people that are going through it every day, that they see it, that they see the impacts on not just themselves and their bodies, but that they see the impacts on their family and friends and the birds and the ants and everything and everyone. And so that's just one aspect.
Thank you so much. 200,000 in 2010. Edna, my question to you, please, can you tell us a little bit about how your work, your art, and your Afrofuturism, shifts the resistance politics that is directed towards, the coloniality of extractivism, please?
Yeah, thank you. One of the first approach was to start imagining what this the system of oppression makes invisible. And if you see, you will see clearly that the invisibility of the knowledge that it is from is produced from these spaces has been rendered invisible, and that give us even difficulties in imagining possibilities. Because if, as we said earlier, when we start to imagine possibilities within the languages that don't have the nuances that we hold in our knowledges, it becomes almost impossible to think of ways out. And the first approach to us was to create spaces that we can refer to them as liberated spaces. And when we're talking about liberation, it is really to see how do we get spaces where new way of negotiating will start taking places. You know, as simple as an example where you see like today's borders are looked at as spaces of division, and also of no connection and all these things. Yet, you know, from a lot of our knowledge and indigenous knowledges and ancestral knowledges, that borders were more or less of spaces of connectivity, where you meet other people, and these were, you know, like market spaces, right? Market spaces. In Congo, you have the concept of kasoko, you know, and when you have those concepts with those, how do you find ways of reactivate them, but not for the sake of going back, but for the idea of saying, yeah, well, this is a data bank that can give us more possibility to think about the future. Like if those spaces, like instead of becoming these spaces of consumerism, that they become more of the spaces of a reconnecting, you know, and the liberation space, when we think about them, it is one of the most valuable tool we had has been always storytelling. And today we are seeing how storytelling is coming back, but again, in a destructive way, you know. But if you think about storytelling with the three principles, and here it is when you're thinking about the initiating wheel, like initiating circle, you will see that a story has a value of education, storytelling has a value of healing, and then storytelling has the value of just entertaining, just having a great fun. And when all these knowledges that they're being put in one, of just saying, yeah, this is just for you spending a day after a stressful day, for you just to, you know, to relax, then you see how much we are losing in these possibilities, how much we are losing when, in fact, here we are talking about knowledge becoming only a physical space, yet knowledge is a spiritual space as well. And when storytelling takes this level, then possibilities are endless. Then we start imagining things that we can act on, and that also we can create. After all, with the famous, famous sentence of saying, you know, if you can imagine it, then you can make it. You know, so with this kind of storytelling, films and art spaces that we created, it is in fact just those possibilities that we offer to the community, where the articulation of remembrance, so that when we remember, we will be able to reconnect the dismembered, as to put it in a word of a Prof. Ngugi wa Thiong'o. You know, it is very crucial that the spaces that will understand how to close the loops, so that the rhythm, natural rhythm, can continue. And how do I say this with differently? Will be that the possibilities of understanding even what we are talking here about, the masses sexual violences that has been used in in the land I'm from, because again, like, yes, in the semantics, we will hear people says that that is my land. Yet when we reactivate the ancestral knowledge, we don't own the land. The land, we belong to the land. And as soon as you start thinking in terms of owning a land, then you have the right to do whatever the Bible told you to do, right? It says you can dominate, you can exploit, or you can do all this nonsense, right? So it is these small nuances of how do you activate them. And then the same problem itself, if you look at it, is that when multinational companies are coming to look to exploit, want to exploit or take over the land, they attack the people. And then when they attack the people and see the resistance that is being put up by locals, they don't understand it. And these are people are fighting still, it may be as a cliche, but people are still fighting with whatever they can find. They don't have sophisticated guns, and why they put up this kind of fight up to where all these proxies of multinational companies, they end up using heavy guns. It doesn't work, and they choose to start using the destruction of the fabric, social fabric itself. Actually, it is because of most of the indigenous cultures there are understand and believe the holiness of a woman. And then when you attack the mother, when you attack the sister, when you attack the daughter, when you attack the wife, when you take already all the substance in the livelihood of the community, and men, they become zombies. And this is because of the fact that people were putting up a fight that nobody wouldn't understand. Why can't you just leave the land and go? But the cosmogony locally shows that clearly, that if you don't go back to the land that you are from, your soul will linger forever out there. So people are fighting for their spiritual survival. And this appear, like a greed of just resources coming there, and think that's the way that things will be solved. No, things won't be solved that way. There is no solutions with those approaches. There is no solution with those vocabularies, right? And when the spaces that I'm talking about, liberated space, that new knowledge can be produced from African perspective, not perspective of, this is, all these nonsense languages are being produced in the West and brought back. They don't make sense to a true liberation of the continent. And through storytelling, going through art with the possibility of creating solutions that make sense to our community, whereby such thing as simple as how will you think when you don't have access to food? And ideas like agro-liberation that Yola is putting in a place, the spaces that we are created, are for us a way to come up with holistic, original ideas, which I think the entire world needs. And Congo, man, here I'm talking about more than 285 tribes, which means these are languages, these are dance, these are philosophy, these are, like, name it. It is all wealth of knowledge that is there, like tapping into that and come to the world, to heal the world. I think we got all. And then if you look at the Congo Basin, which Congo as a space has already, like, it is 60%, 60% of the entire basin. That look at it from the ancestral ecology, whereby land and that space is understood as a repository of knowledge, right? Because we are bones and we go back to the land. So the land keep all these knowledges. And as she has all these possibilities, imagine you have the capacity to activate them, where the question of ecology doomed is being on tongues every single day, that it is not there because the people, part of the entire system, all the being, they are still in conversation. And from that conversation, we can develop tools that can heal the planet. That's why we refer to that as African futurism, because it is not connected to this understanding of the time, where time it is divided into three, that you have past, present, and future. No, this is connected to the Asia lobby, where the past of the future is connected to the future of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very illuminating. Maurice, please, I think on the issue of storytelling, which I think Pedna brings up. I'm wondering, because you do a lot of mobilization work here in the US, and I was wondering if, how is it unfolding for you? How is the mobilization in the US unfolding against the kinds of injustices that we are witnessing in Congo, and whether in your mobilization strategies you actually bring some of what Pedna just shared, these indigenous, tropes, indigenous practices. Because very often I think, when we are deeply embedded in intellectual stations like the university or even in the West, there is really a kind of playing down what Pedna just shared, that this is really so primitive, it's primordial, right? And so I think that in spite of the fact that activism has to happen on the level of bringing attention to, the human rights abuses that the violence against the environment creates for Congolese people, that there's also the violence of the mind, right? The violence of indigenous knowledges, right? And so do you incorporate this in your mobilization here in the US?
Thank you for the question. I'm chuckling as you asked the question, because you asked me, do we bring what Petna just shared, in our mobilization? Actually, we bring Petna, as we've brought it here today. In that, if you look at our Instagram page, you'll see Petna. There's a short clip that we have there at Congo Friends on Instagram, where he crystallizes how do we talk about the Congo? How do we engage the Congo? And what we've been, a key aim of our mobilization is to channel people to the indigenous knowledge, to point them to a portal. Petna and I, we've been talking about the Shango portal, where people, as a part of the education process. And I'm glad you asked the question, because something that Alice said I wanted to respond to. Since, for the past 6 months, there's been an incredible uptick in inquiry and wanting to be educated, wanting to know. And what we've been doing at Friends of the Congo, to the best of our ability, is to channel people to that portal, to direct them to that portal. Both Alice, virtually, and also in reality, right? We've had folks who reached out to us from Australia, and they're like, we want to be engaged, we want to be involved. We actually want to go to the ground. I said, well, we have a delegation going to the Congo in June. You can be a part of it. They're like, no, can we go before then? So reach out to Petna, who's his space, Yole, represents the gateway to sort of an initiation, introduction. And we said, well, we'll connect you with a path for understanding how to be engaged with the Congo, how to really go and listen first and foremost. So we were able to facilitate that real connection where the young lady from Australia, she went on the ground and she sat and listened, you know, not only to Petna, but the indigenous communities that are there in North Kivu. So what we Petna and his methodology, that portal, that gateway, that Ishango gateway, that Ishango portal is fundamental to our work. Because ultimately, what we're aiming to do is to rally people and mobilize people so that they can be engaged with Congolese on the front lines, those 250 plus people that Petna talked about that are exercising remarkable agency that has been silenced. So we aim to wake people up to that. Like, this is not just a blank slate where multinational corporations are going in, you know, where the local elites are ravaging, where neighboring countries are invading and plundering, but you have vibrancy throughout the country, resistance, production of knowledge, all that is creativity that is taking place. So that's fundamental to our mobilization, to our education, to our organizing. And in the past 6 months, I just cannot tell you the number of organizations, the number of students, the number of average people. They're just thirsting for this knowledge. So our challenge has been to create a space or even the infrastructure where we can facilitate, you know, responding to people who want to do research. Students from just so many universities, they want to do their master's thesis, or they want to go on the ground and do research on the ground. So there's just been an incredible interest, remarkable pursuit for understanding around the Congo, both virtually and in person. And we are, for us, right, looking to engage the possibilities and opportunities that have come about as a result of this, let's say, awakening among the millennial generation, among the Gen Z. And they may have been driven, you know, they say, oh, there are atrocities being committed, you know, in Palestine, or atrocities being committed in Sudan. Oh, in the Congo, I mean, the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. But we bring them through a process to expand their thinking, that it's not just a question of atrocities, but as Petna stated from the outset, a question of beauty, a matter of creativity, a matter of agency, a deep well of knowledge that these young people can dive into and be a part of something that could be special and new. So the response from the youth, from the global community, from really all over the world, has been incredible. And we're producing information, producing content in collaboration with partners like Petna and Yole and Gova, with Samuel Yagase, who's right there in the heart of the Congo rainforest in the Isangi district of Chopo province, in where the famed Yangambi Center is. We find these remarkable ideas and solutions that are being pursued right in the midst of the rainforest. So we consult with these local frontline organizers and mobilizers, and connect them to this tremendous increase in inquiry coming from all over the world. So we're in a moment of remarkable possibility, and we are doing our best as an organization to facilitate the incredible demand. And part of that, we're speaking to students, is bringing students on board, like Alice came on board with us before this, as interns, so that they can be a part of this incredible journey of learning, incredible journey of discovering, incredible journey of making a difference by being a true ally, by being in solidarity, but not coming as if you already have prepackaged solutions for the Congo when the solutions are right there on the ground itself. So these young people, we're bringing them to help us unearth these solutions and make them available to those of us in the global north who, when we have our discourses about green energy transition and combating the climate crisis, we have an entire country and people who are fundamental to these issues actually being left out. So we call on these young people, so that those of you who are at Georgetown in the room today, to come with us and help us educate and point to the direction to our policymakers, to our decision makers about the remarkable reservoir of knowledge, remarkable reservoir of courage, remarkable reservoir of wisdom that is found in this space that we call the Democratic Republic of Congo.
So you all are listening, right? The students, this is an opportunity to really venture out into the world and, you know, think and challenge yourself. So Maurice, oh, he left. So I was going to ask.
Yeah, Maurice,
Yes.
Maurice, you named someone I actually work with, Samuel Igase. Oh God, he's such an incredible spirit. He's, as you said, he's an activist in the Congo. He's been doing some really important work, tying in human rights, and as well as looking at the environment as well. And I was thinking about him throughout this whole entire panel. So when you named him, I was like, oh my God, he works with the organization I'm working with. So definitely want to highlight such a talented activist who, and I think as Pedna said, really I think embodies this kind of tremendous spirit of kindness, joy, creativity. And it's been a pleasure to work with him on the climate space internationally and kind of see the richness that the Congolese people continue to bring in encouraging the world to understand our environment differently. So just want to shout out Samuel.
Yes, indeed. And it's kind of interesting because CGRF represents that new model of creative thinking, right? In terms of how the global north, a model of how the global north can engage the global south, where they just overturn their board of directors that were made up of funders and people from the global north and policymakers. And they said, well, what we'd like to do is to establish a new model where we have those on the front lines become the members of the board, right? And we'll put out a call to invite people from around the world, to indigenous communities, to come and join us and be at the top, so to speak, of the decision-making process that affects their lives, right? So your organization certainly is a model worthy of emulation in terms of, worth emulating in terms of shifting the balance, right? Restructuring the way the global north engages with the global south.
I guess I can give some more insight. So I work at the Climate Justice Resilience Fund. And as Reese was talking about, I would say a year ago or so, they had their board of directors, and this is a philanthropic organization. And like most organizations, even Georgetown, the board of directors are usually very influential people, tend to often be funders, so like top donors. And yeah, the board of directors, especially after 2020, with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, was kind of really questioning how they did things. And, especially because a lot of the funding goes to indigenous communities and frontline communities in the global south, fighting the climate crisis. And yeah, they decided that maybe white Americans from the US and Canada shouldn't necessarily always be calling the shots, so they scrapped the board that they had. They put out an open call and asked for activists and practitioners and experts from all around the world to kind of submit to become the new board. And I actually work with the board themselves, like that's like my job. And we have like some of the most incredible advocates around, and I definitely, it's been humbling to kind of see that different organizations are really trying to think creatively about how we engage with communities, frontline communities, especially when related to the climate crisis. Because not necessarily just because they're the communities that are absorbing a lot of the funding, but also they're the communities that have some of the most innovative knowledge on how to really challenge and to restructure and to rethink about how we understand our role as people in relation to environment. But so sorry to plug, but I'm honestly, once again, Samuel Gassi, you guys haven't looked into the talented Congolese activists.
I think you've answered the question I was going to ask you.
Not
Because I was going to ask you, right, what does liberation look like from these internal systems of oppression? And it's like clearly in Ghana, we say you drank the soup before you ate the fufu. So you already drank the soup, so you don't have any fufu left. And so I guess the next question, so I mean, unless you want to add to it, because I was really wondering what in terms of our reflections on the future, right? Like clearly the overturning of this board, right, is one good way to think of how future directions might look like. Do you want to add something else?
Yeah, I think something, when I say that if our climate policies and approaches aren't interested in human rights, we will fail in kind of solving the climate crisis, point blank, we will not succeed. And many of you guys may think, oh, but if we just don't produce as many greenhouse gases, there's no problem anymore. What are you talking about? Like, that's all we have to do. No. The disruption of human rights, unfortunately, it's a signal of how our systems understand themselves in relations to the environment. Why are we even here? Why do we have a climate crisis? Obviously, we can point to oil and fossil fuel production, but fundamentally, it's because we have a system that does not value people, that does not value the planet, that puts profit over everything. That is why we're here. We see the production of fossil fuels, the increase of carbon is only a fruit of that greater tree. And the problem fundamentally is this kind of capitalistic colonial vision of how we value things. And obviously addressing greenhouse gases is one part of it, but if we do not address how these systems, in particularly green technology, but all these systems manufacture the world we live in. And if we continue to foster a system that may have less greenhouse gases, but continues to run because of violation of human rights, because of the dispossession of indigenous people's lands, and the violence against communities, we are not getting anywhere. If anything, we're just kind of painting a new green layer on top of colonialism. And we're not going to move forward, unfortunately. We're going to find ourselves in a similar problem. And we see this with the many false climate solutions. So for example, with carbon markets, which not saying that they're all bad, but for example, like the carbon offsets, which oftentimes dispossess indigenous peoples of their lands. And many communities have noted is not a substantive solution to really getting at the problem. So I think in terms of a liberating framework into the future, I think that I definitely link this kind of overturning of systems that continue to violate human rights are deeply entrenched if we want to have a livable planet. Have a planet where people, and to me, a livable planet isn't just a planet where people of the global north can, enjoy solar panels, can enjoy, vegan diets. That is not, it's at the cost of death and destruction in the global south. That is not liberation, and I promise you, that framework is not going to get us very far. And to be a liberatory framework, it is to really overturn and to really investigate those systems. So down from greenhouse gases to the ecology and how it affects animals, but also, and I think Petna really highlighted this, really almost a cosmology, the way we literally see the world, what we value, what we think is good, what we think is aspirational. All of those things need to change, not just our electric cars. That is one part of it. And if we're a little too focused maybe on the tech, which is essential, but not necessarily looking at how our culture, how our society understands itself in relation to our environment and our relation to each other, yeah, I don't think we're gonna get very far, and I think for me, a liberatory framework is a framework that encompasses that and sees that as all those parts as intrinsic. We all belong, as Petna said, to this earth. And to be able to address this kind of climate crisis, we also have to kind of adjust ourselves and how we belong.
So my final question to all the panelists, what does a just and ideal future look like to you all?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear.
What does a just and ideal future look to you all? And in answering that, you could include your final words to the audience.
I can go ahead and start, since everybody's jumping at their seats to go, but, I'd say adjust, how did you phrase it, just and
Ideal future.
ideal future? I'd say, okay, let's be honest, most of you will probably never go to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's one thing to kind of think about, but if this is the first time you're engaging with the Congo, I just challenge you that when you do leave here, that you continue to engage with the Congo and not just engage with it, but also tell your friends, tell your family, tell people. Because another thing that we've talked about, I think each of us in different ways, is the unseen aspect of Congo, of just people not knowing enough or people not pushing themselves to know enough. So I would ask that you engage with Congo in all its beauty, whether it be through cinema, whether it be through music, whether it be through reading. I mean, we're in an academic institution and we have access to some of the greatest libraries on the US, or at least in the DMV. And so I would really challenge you to read more from Congolese authors, from Congolese people, and go beyond just like Insta infographics or just TikTok posts, but actually try to engage with the Congolese people and know their beauty and know their complexities, just as each and every one of you are complex individuals with complex ideas. It's also very important to understand that the Congolese people are the same. And even beyond that too, when you do read, challenge yourself to not only just engage with Congolese works, but also engage with very anti-racist, anti-capitalist works as well. Because there's no point in reading about the Congolese people if you're only going to read about it through your Western understandings that can be rooted in very anti-racist, in very racist ideologies. So I'd also challenge you to read more, and just talk to your friends more and things like that.
I can jump in terms of a just and ideal future. I actually have a laundry list, but I'll keep it short. By the way, for the students who want to be engaged, Alice referred to, we encourage you to go to freecongo.org, freecongo.org, and you get there. There are 3 ways quickly that you can be engaged and be a part of this burgeoning effort of solidarity around the Congo. Also join other students in different parts of the country who are setting up working groups and study groups and organizing groups and organizing events like what's being organized today at Georgetown. So you can be a part of a larger family of students throughout not only throughout the country, but throughout the globe. And freecongo.org is where you can do that. And really, that's on the outside of the Congo. That's part of the answer in terms of how the future that you're talking about, where we see people throughout the globe with a genuine interest uh, to learn, to listen, to inquire as what's unfolding in the Congo. I think that to see that happening and for that to continue, not just for it to be a moment, but for it to transition into a movement, uh, that would be an ideal occurrence. In addition to that, an end to the violence, end to the exploitation, and end to the extractivism. Basically, a turning over of upending of values. Petma referenced capitalism being hand in glove with colonialism. So a system where people are prioritized over profit, a system that engages and values the local indigenous population and their ways of life. Their ideas. So system where Penn talked about where it there's free access to the land and the knowledge and all of that is that data bank that he talked about. That doesn't right now. Congolese have to fight to get access to that, and we're being displaced, and so and then in addition to that, that justice where those who have benefited from this unequal system, from this exploitative system, that they actually compensate, that they actually restore to the extent that they can those who've been the victims of this exploitative system. I saw that I heard someone at the very outset of the introduction, the head of Guyana. This is a viral speech, our response to a question in an interview that he had encapsulates it well, that the global north has a debt to pay, not only in terms of resources or finances, but in terms of moral reconciliation. So that's the future or the ideal future that I would like.
Thank you. Adnan?
Yeah. Basically, I wanted to say something about the word you used, and I'm so fascinated about that word. You said there is an academic approach or academia discourse that qualify the knowledge as primitive. That's not a bad word. That's in fact a beautiful word because it is going to the prime, to this starting point. And with this, I wanted just to point out the hierarchy of knowledge. And this is very important in when we are formulating new languages, that we should be aware of who we are citing, because system of normalized violence, they have made so many reality, a lot of beauty and knowledge, they have made it invisible. And that is part of the erasure. And you start thinking that decentering the knowledge, hierarchy becomes a problem. Capitalism feels as if it's being attacked when alternatives are presented. So I think the ideal world I'm looking at it is when instead of having one center, we can have multiple centers of how we can engage the way of inhabiting a space. Thank you.
Yes, I have to echo Putnam that a pluriverse. We as people and our cultures are just as diverse as the various ecologies of this earth. And we have such diverse ways of understanding and connecting with that. I think an ideal future is one where justice, and that includes gender justice, that includes climate justice, that includes social justice, and in its various intersections are held as primary values. Is how our society even understands what is profitable. Profitable isn't just, you know, money for stakeholders, it's also the richness and the dignity of human life. That is, and I think the crazy thing is we may think, okay, but that's just, and I think Hedna also says this, with knowledge, it's this assumption that it's almost inevitable. Of course, profits is king. Of course, that's the primary way of understanding our world and extracting value. It is not. It is not. It is not. Well, how do I say? It's not necessarily naturalized. It's not necessarily a given. It's not automatic. It's a choice, a social choice that has made our society value that. And in a pluriverse, hopefully we have different communities that recenter different forms of value. And then, you know, and hopefully those values once again are centered on those ideas of dignity. And I hope that our world in the future, within those kind of pluriverses, look at dignity of human life, of animal life, of the environment, kind of living in a beautiful and dignified way. And I really hope that, and I know that that's possible. It's, you know, it's certainly possible. We have varied communities and cultures and histories that demonstrate that we can. Human beings have lived on this earth for millions of years. In only the last 150 have we seen this destruction of our environment. If we lived here for millions of years, that means we've known how to live in good ways, in ways that are substantive, that are regenerative. And I hope that we can all find those different ways within our different communities, ways that can once again center human dignity within all of our diversity. And so that we may find various forms of harmony within our earth. And I think that's certainly possible. And I'm really happy to see, and I hope that you guys find ways to see that possibility in your life.
Thank you all for coming and to my students who came in your beautiful colors and guidance and brilliance. Thank you for coming. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over back to Akansha and Ashani for the last remarks. Well, let's talk with them. These two did everything.
Thank you. And I know we just did a lot of clapping, but one more round of applause for all of our panelists and our amazing moderator. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. There will be a recording of this event. Please send it to your friends. Please engage other people and ask them to listen to all of the different perspectives that were shared here today. Thank you, Maurice and Petna, for joining us online. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Kaulan. Thank you, Kwame, for being such wonderful panelists and for sharing so many different forms of insight. There's also food. Take some food before you go. Anything else?
Yeah, and Maurice and Petna, you can't see this, but we have a full house here today. So you are speaking to a lot of people and impacted a lot of people. So thank you so much. Yeah, grab some food. Look up all these incredible people. Their names are on our website. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the food. Bon appetit.